The Rolling Stones have rocked the world for decades, but the tragic death of their founding member Brian Jones remains a haunting mystery. He's the only member of the band who is dead. Found lifeless in his pool in 1969, Jones's death was ruled an accident, yet whispers of foul play have never faded. Every year, new theories, confessions, and secrets about his death make it out, but they always turn out to be false. This year, however, the evidence of foul play is undeniable, so I'll let you decide for yourself. Was Brian Jones's death an accident, or is there a darker truth someone is hiding from the public? Murder theories. Brian Jones, the legendary guitarist and founding member of the Rolling Stones, was found dead in his swimming pool on July 3, 1969, officially ruled as death by misadventure. The circumstances surrounding his demise have fueled years of speculation and conspiracy theories. Every year, new individuals emerge, contending that Brian Jones's drowning was suspicious, calling for the overturning of the official verdict. The latest addition to this chorus is his daughter, Barbara Marion, who believes her father was murdered. The theories surrounding Brian Jones's death are varied and endlessly fascinating, ranging from the somewhat believable to the outright ridiculous. Despite the official verdict, doubts persist, with new voices regularly joining the debate, suggesting that Jones's drowning was not accidental. One of the most compelling theories revolves around a builder named Frank Thorogood, whom Jones had hired to work on his house. Thorogood, along with his girlfriend Janet Lawson, was staying at the rock star's house when the tragic incident occurred. Like many others drawn to the rich and famous, they began to see themselves as friends, enjoying the perks of celebrity life. On the day of Jones's death, an argument reportedly broke out between Jones and Thorogood over money the builder believed he was owed. The altercation allegedly escalated into a physical confrontation in the pool, during which Thorogood held Jones under the water for too long. Despite the lack of physical evidence indicating a struggle, proponents of this theory dismiss this as a result of sloppy police work. Their case gained traction when another individual from that time, Tom Keylock, claimed that Thorogood confessed to him on his deathbed, admitting to the killing. According to Keylock, Thorogood said, "It was me that did Brian. I just finally snapped." Considering these details, it is plausible that this version of events could have transpired. Another person implicated in the murder theory is Tom Keylock, the Fixer. Keylock is a fascinating character, an ex-Arnhem Paratroop veteran. He made a cameo appearance in Play with Fire and served as Bob Dylan's driver during his 1966 UK tour. By 1969, he was a general fixer for the rock group and was called to the scene on the night of Jones' death to manage the situation. However, his penchant for mischief and attention-seeking raised doubts about his credibility regarding Thorogood's alleged deathbed confession. Nevertheless, many believe Keylock could have been involved in Jones's death. Music writer Jeffrey Guiliano, who spent years studying the conspiracy, suggested that Keylock orchestrated a group of people to hold Jones underwater while he directed operations from the poolside. Keylock's alleged involvement has led some to suspect the involvement of the Rolling Stones themselves. Adding fuel to this speculation, conspiracy theorists point to individuals like Anna Wolin. Wolin, who was Jones's 22-year-old girlfriend at the time of his death, believed Thorogood killed Jones, but has also insinuated that the Rolling Stones management really know what happened. This leads us to the Rolling Stones themselves. According to this particularly exaggerated theory, Tom Keylock was allegedly instructed by one or more members of the band to kill the guitarist. However, this theory goes right into the realm of fantasy. Several supposed motives to terminate Brian have been suggested. Firstly, that Brian Jones had invented the name the Rolling Stones and wanted it back. However, Jones had already signed away the rights to the name. Secondly, it was rumored that Keith Richards had threatened Jones with a knife earlier in the day and ordered Keylock to resolve the argument. This rumor persists despite the fact that neither Richards nor Jones had actually seen each other for some time. Also, some believe that Jones had recorded a masterpiece so exceptional that the Stones felt threatened by it. However, the sessions Jones had around this time were chaotic and produced no music at all. These theories, though intriguing, lack substantial evidence. They contribute to the mystique surrounding Jones's death, ensuring that it remains a subject of fascination and speculation. Another aspect that raised suspicion was the Rolling Stones' increasing darkness during that time. Their album, Their Satanic Majesty's Request, led some to speculate that something occultic was occurring. Things like Jones was killed as a ritual sacrifice. Of all the suspicions regarding Brian Jones's death, this one sounds the most bizarre. A completely different theory emerged, linking Brian Jones's Jones's death to the royal family. According to this theory, Jones was killed because he was allegedly having a secret affair with Princess Margaret, who had visited Cotchford Farm. This theory gained renewed attention when Princess Diana was allegedly killed for her affair with Dodi Fayed, a playboy deemed undesirable by the royal family. However, this was 1969. It's perhaps unsurprising that Jones's death continues to attract such darkness. Fans are unwilling to accept it as simply the death of a beautiful young man who had succumbed to drugs, alcohol, and likely clinical depression in an era that barely recognized mental health issues. The 60s were all about individualism and self-expression, a rebellion against the conformity of the post-war years. Belief in conspiracy can be seen as a form of narcissism, allowing individuals to believe they are special because they discern patterns others are too conventional to see. For many, Jones's death symbolized the dark turn that the hippie dreams of the decade took. It marked the beginning of the end of the idealism of the 60s, a theme explored in Play with Fire. Jones's death was just the start. In the same year, California was horrified by the Manson family murders of Sharon Tate and others. A few months later, the fatal stabbing of an African-American music fan at a Rolling Stones concert at Altamont further darkened the year. For those obsessed with finding meaning where perhaps there is none, Jones's death was perfect. His inclusion in the so-called 27 Club, followed by Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, and later Kurt Cobain, Amy Winehouse, and others, adds a dark, numerological element to the story. Despite the police reiterating year after year that the verdict of death by misadventure still stands and that the case is closed, for many, that will never be enough. As conspiracy theories continue to circulate, the truth behind what happened that fateful night remains elusive, ensuring that the case remains open and endlessly fascinating to this day. The mystery surrounding Brian Jones's death continues to captivate the public's imagination, ensuring that speculation about what really happened to him remains alive and well. Friction in the band. In the months preceding his death in 1969, Brian Jones, once the most angelic-looking and musically gifted member of the Rolling Stones, had become almost unrecognizable. His once pristine blonde bob was now unkempt, and his features were bloated due to his addictions. Often, he would arrive at the studio, where the band was recording their 7th album, Beggar's Banquet, too stoned and sleepy to play his guitar. Sometimes, he didn't show up at all, marking a stark departure from his former self. By June 1969, Brian Jones's self-destructive tendencies, combined with mood swings and unpredictable behavior, had become intolerable for his bandmates. What worsened things even further was Brian's legal troubles. Brian Jones faced legal trouble on 2 occasions due to drug possession. His first arrest occurred in 1967, when police found marijuana, cocaine, and methamphetamine in his possession. Despite this discovery, Jones denied using any drugs harder than marijuana. His second arrest happened in May 1968 for cannabis possession. Jones claimed the cannabis had been left by a previous tenant of the flat he was living in. This second arrest was particularly risky for Jones, as he was already on probation and faced the possibility of a long jail sentence if found guilty. Fortunately for Jones, although the jury did convict him, the presiding judge showed leniency. Instead of sentencing him to jail, the judge fined him and sternly warned, "For goodness sake, don't get into trouble again, or it really will be serious." The friction in the band worsened when Brian Jones lost his girlfriend, Anita Pallenberg, to his fellow bandmate Keith Richards. When Anita Pallenberg made the first move on Keith Richards, she was already romantically involved with his bandmate Brian Jones. However, the woman often referred to as the 6th Rolling Stone, who made the rockers look like awkward adolescents, left an indelible mark on the band. Pallenberg was a fashion model in her 20s when she attended her first Rolling Stones concert in 1965 with a friend in Munich, the New York Times reported. She managed to go backstage and offered Jones some marijuana and hashish before they headed to his hotel room. The pair quickly became a couple, with Pallenberg significantly boosting Jones's confidence. At the time, Jones was losing his footing within the band's power dynamics, and having a woman like Anita by his side changed everything. She was beautiful, but more importantly, she had a powerful presence and an undeniable charisma. Meanwhile, Keith Richards admired Pallenberg from what he thought was a safe distance. He confessed to wanting her for himself, and he was determined to make it happen. The relationship between Jones and Pallenberg, however, was tumultuous. Richards recalled hearing the thumping sounds of their fights at night and seeing Jones emerge with black eyes and bruises. Pallenberg was not one to be easily subdued, and each altercation left Jones bandaged and bruised. Pallenberg's relationship with Richards began after he rescued her from being beaten by Jones in Morocco in 1967. This incident marked the beginning of a deep and intense relationship between Pallenberg and Richards, which would last through the 1970s. During this period, Pallenberg and Richards were inseparable, solidifying their bond and further alienating Jones. The affair between Pallenberg and Richards was perhaps the heaviest blow Jones had to endure endure before ultimately parting ways with the Rolling Stones. For Jones, it was a profound personal betrayal, and it contributed significantly to his eventual departure from the band. Pallenberg and Richards were together for 12 years, sharing a passionate and tumultuous relationship. Although they never married, the couple had 3 children together. Anita Pallenberg had a lot of influence on the Rolling Stones. She was a central figure in the band's history, and she left a lasting legacy on their music and their personal lives. Hostility grew between Brian Jones, Mick Jagger, and Keith Richards, further alienating Jones from the group. Although Jones was often noted for his friendly and outgoing demeanor, bandmates Bill Wyman, Keith Richards, and Charlie Watts have remarked on his unpredictable and difficult nature. Jones's attitude could change frequently. One moment he was caring and generous, and the next he seemed intent on aggravating those around him. Bill Wyman, in his book Stone Alone, observed that there were at least 2 sides to Brian's personality. One, Brian was introverted, shy, and deep thinking. The other was a preening peacock, gregarious, artistic, desperately needing assurance from his peers. Wyman added that Jones pushed every friendship to the limit and way beyond, highlighting the strain he placed on his relationships within the band. Combined with the pain of losing his girlfriend to a fellow bandmate, Jones's legal issues, along with his estrangement from his bandmates, substance abuse, and erratic behavior, severely impacted his involvement with the Rolling Stones. His attendance at rehearsals and recording sessions became increasingly sporadic. According to Gary Herman, author of Rock and Roll Babylon, Jones was literally incapable of making music. When he tried to play harmonica, his mouth started bleeding. On June 8, 1969, Mick Jagger, Keith Richards, and Charlie Watts visited Jones to deliver the devastating news that the Rolling Stones would continue without him. This marked the end of his major contributions to the band's work. The next day, Jones released a statement saying, "I no longer see eye to eye with the others over the discs we are cutting," creating the impression that he had left the band voluntarily. However, the reality was that he had been pushed out. Jones was immediately replaced by guitarist Mick Taylor, who remained with the Rolling Stones until 1974. Jones's inability to join the tour and his ongoing erratic behavior underscored the growing divide between him and the rest of the band. His departure marked a significant turning point for the Rolling Stones as they moved forward without the man who had been instrumental in their formation and early success. Left abandoned by his bandmates, Jones found himself suddenly alone and adrift. According to music writer David Dalton, as depicted in Broomfield's film, Jones was now ostracized from his own band. Just 3.5 weeks later, he was dead. His body was discovered motionless at the bottom of his swimming pool at his home. Goodbye, Rolling Stones. Brian Jones was a cornerstone of the Rolling Stones' early success, captivating audiences with his striking blonde hair and good looks, as well as his uncanny ability to master any instrument within minutes. His musical contributions were both diverse and profound. Jones, though often uncredited, co-wrote and played the recorders on Ruby Tuesday, sitar and tambura on Paint It Black, dulcimer on I Am Waiting, and Lady Jane, the lead guitar riff on Get Off My Cloud, harpsichord on Yesterday's Papers, the trumpet and trombone on Something Happened to Me Yesterday, the marimba on Under My Thumb, and the auto harp on You Got the Silver. His talents as a musician were very effective in shaping the unique style of the Rolling Stones during their early years. However, Jones's influence began to wane when Mick Jagger and Keith Richards formed their prolific songwriting partnership in 1965, steering the band away from Jones's blues-based direction. By 1966, Jones's mental instability and escalating drug abuse had become significant liabilities for the group. His substance abuse issues led to frequent absences from tour dates and recording sessions, and even when he did attend, he was often unable to function effectively within the band. Bill Wyman, the Stones' bassist, reflected on Jones's decline in his 1991 autobiography, Stone Alone, stating, "For 2 years, not only had he become physically vulnerable and battered by his drug busts, but within the Stones he was sad, isolated, and obviously unhappy." This sentiment was echoed by Mick Jagger, who spoke about the tragic deterioration of Jones in the final years of his life. Both Mick and Richards took drugs, but Brian took too many drugs of the wrong kind, and he couldn't even function as a musician. He didn't seem to be that interested in contributing to the Rolling Stones anymore. No one knew if he was going to show up for practice, or what state he was going to be in, or even what he was going to be able to do in that state. At times like that, it was difficult to assign him any roles. Jones's erratic behavior and unreliability became more pronounced as his addictions worsened. His unpredictable presence created a volatile atmosphere within the band, making it challenging for them to work cohesively. ultimately leading to his dismissal from the band. Brian Jones agreed to a settlement with the Rolling Stones that provided him a lump sum of nearly $200,000 and an annual salary of $40,000 as long as the band remained together. He was also permitted to issue a statement claiming he had voluntarily left the band. After his departure, Jones reportedly attempted to form a supergroup with John Lennon, who had maintained a friendship with him despite his dismissal from the Stones. Jones was a member of the Rolling Stones for 7 years, and his significance to the band's early success cannot be overstated. He was a true innovator, and despite his troubled life, his influence on music deserves recognition. Brian Jones was one of the first musicians in Britain to play slide guitar, and his passion for the blues was fundamental to the Stones' sound during their formative years. His musicianship, particularly in the band's early days, was crucial to the success of their singles that catapulted the Stones into the pop charts. Moreover, his fashion sense and hairstyle became iconic, inspiring bands on both sides of the Atlantic. While Jones's musical talents did not extend to composing, his contributions can be heard on numerous Stones recordings. His slide guitar work is evident on tracks like I'm a King Bee, Little Red Rooster, and No Expectations from Beggar's Banquet. He played the sitar on Street Fighting Man, organ on Let's Spend the Night Together, marimba on Under My Thumb and Out of Time, and saxophone and oboe on Dandelion. Jones's natural talent and ability as a multi-instrumentalist earned him reverence in the music world, and some considered him a genius. Despite his personal struggles that led to his isolation from the band, his contributions helped in shaping the style of the Rolling Stones, and he left a lasting mark on rock history. His early adoption of the slide guitar and his deep love for the blues was central to the band's identity, making him an essential figure in their rise to fame. Behind the scenes, Brian Jones faced significant issues despite his charisma. His charm allowed him to bully others and have them do his bidding. The band had a few hangers-on, one of whom had more money than the rest. Jones would make this individual walk behind the band as they headed to various establishments. After extracting money from him, Jones would force him to wait outside while the rest of the band went inside to eat or drink. The situation worsened when the other band members discovered that Jones was receiving an additional £5 compared to them. Keith Richards recalled this revelation as the beginning of the end for Brian. Several factors expedited Jones's eventual departure from the group. While his multi-instrumental prowess was his greatest asset, it also overshadowed his ability to write original songs. Jones thrived during the Stones' early days playing jazz and blues clubs. He was the go-to guy for hearing an Englishman play old slide blues guitar licks, mastering the styles of artists like Muddy Waters, Elmore James, and Robert Johnson. However, the arrival of manager Andrew Loog Oldham marked a turning point. Oldham, who had previously worked as a publicist for the Beatles under Brian Epstein, had a clear vision to transform the Stones into a more pop-oriented group. His goal was to craft the Stones as the bad boy counterparts to the Fab Four. This shift meant the band needed to start writing their own songs. Consequently, the power dynamics within the band shifted from Jones to Mick Jagger and Keith Richards. The latter two formed a supreme songwriting partnership that would later be known as the Glimmer Twins. This transition angered Jones. He struggled to keep up with the evolution of the Rolling Stones, remaining somewhat stuck in the past. The band's shift towards original compositions and a pop-oriented sound left Jones feeling sidelined. Despite his talent, he found it increasingly difficult to contribute meaningfully to the band's new direction. Jones' inability to adapt to the changing dynamics within the band, combined with his personal issues and the loss of his authoritative role, led to his alienation. His once pivotal role in the Stones diminished as Jagger and Richards' songwriting took center stage. On June 8, 1969, Mick Jagger, Keith Richards, and drummer Charlie Watts made the difficult decision to fire Brian Jones from the Rolling Stones. They cited his ongoing legal issues, which would likely prevent him from obtaining a work visa for their upcoming US tour, as the primary reason for his dismissal. Thus, Brian Jones's time with the Rolling Stones came to an end. But that wasn't the only thing that would end, as in the following weeks, his life would too. And for years, there have been numerous conspiracy theories about the night Jones died, with several suggesting foul play. Death. Around midnight on the night of July 1969, Brian Jones was found lifeless at the bottom of his swimming pool at Kochford Farm. His Swedish girlfriend, Anna Wolin, believed he was still alive when they pulled him from the water, insisting she felt a faint pulse. However, by the time medical professionals arrived, it was too late. Jones was pronounced dead upon arrival at the hospital at the age of 27. The coroner's report concluded that he had drowned, later describing it as death by misadventure. The report also noted significant enlargement of his his liver and heart, attributed to past drug and alcohol abuse. Despite this official ruling, the circumstances leading to Jones's death and subsequent investigations have placed a big question mark on the verdict of death by misadventure. Jones's death at Cotchford Farm added a layer of tragedy to a location already steeped in history. The 16th century farmhouse was once owned by A. Milne, the beloved author who created Winnie the Pooh. The surrounding area inspired Milne's stories, with real locations like Galleon's Lap, Pooh Sticks Bridge, and Pooh Corner drawing from the nearby 100-acre wood. These same woods, likely silent witnesses to the night's events, have fueled speculation about what truly happened. Brian Jones had purchased Cotchford Farm in November 1968, seeking refuge from relentless harassment by Norman Pilcher, a police sergeant from Scotland Yard. Pilcher, known for targeting pop stars and leaders of the 1960s counterculture, had previously arrested Mick Jagger, Keith Richards, John Lennon, and Jones himself, often on questionable marijuana charges. After a couple of stints in court, Brian Jones sought solace at his East Sussex farm, Cotchford Farm. Despite quitting harder drugs, his health and reliability continued to deteriorate due to heavy drinking and prescription pill abuse. Jones envisioned Cotchford Farm as his permanent home. To make improvements, he enlisted Tom Keylock, a minder for the Rolling Stones with underworld connections, to hire a construction company. Keylock chose a company led by Frank Thorogood, a man he knew. Unfortunately, Thorogood and his crew took advantage of Jones's celebrity status. They moved into the property, partied excessively, and freeloaded off Jones. They seldom worked, instead enjoying the pool and other amenities. The situation reached a tipping point when Jones decided to evict Thorogood and his crew, withholding payment for their work until they left. Shortly after this confrontation, on July 3rd, 1969, Brian Jones was found dead. The ambulance arrived at Cotchford Farm just after midnight. From this point, we have the coroner's report, witness statements, or the lack thereof, and media portrayals of the incident. The coroner's report initially listed the cause of death as drowning, later revised to death by misadventure. It noted the presence of fresh water in Jones's lungs and detected both uppers and downers in his system, along with 3 pints of beer. For someone like Jones, known for his high alcohol tolerance and strong swimming ability, accidental drowning seemed improbable. The fresh water in his lungs added another layer of mystery. According to LA Weekly, Cotchford Farm had a trough of fresh water near the garden. Some of Jones's friends speculated that he might have drowned there rather than in the pool. The documentary Rolling Stone, The Life and Death of Brian Jones, sheds further light on these suspicions. It alleges that biologists who reviewed Jones's death records concluded that immediate stress on his tissue and heart suggested he knew he was being murdered. This revelation aligns with the theory that foul play was involved in his death. Secondly, it's challenging to pinpoint the exact number of people present at the scene of Brian Jones's death. Most reports suggest that only 3 other individuals were there: Jones's girlfriend, Anna Wolin, Janet Lawson, and Frank Thorogood. However, unofficial accounts also place construction crew members, Tom Keylock, and Jones's ex-girlfriend, Suki Poitier, at the scene. This discrepancy adds to the mystery surrounding the night Jones died. Lastly, the police and society seemed determined to use Jones as a cautionary tale for the counterculture lifestyle. He was portrayed as a tragic example of what happened when one deviated from conventional norms, indulging in drugs and heavy drinking. If drugs or alcohol could be blamed at the time, they certainly were. The investigation into Brian Jones's death has been reopened and closed 3 times, first in 1984, then in 1994, and most recently in 2009. New evidence emerged over the years, including the connection between Frank Thorogood and the near-fatal beating of his mistress, who might have attempted to speak to Sussex police, according to LA Weekly. This information, along with other testimonies, suggested foul play. Brian's girlfriend at the time, Anna, was instructed to return to her native Sweden by Rolling Stone's management immediately after Jones's death, but remained vocal about her suspicions. "I don't know if Frank meant to kill Brian," she said. "Maybe it was horseplay in the pool that went wrong, but I knew all along he did not die a natural death. I'm still sure of it." Her insistence on this point has kept the debate alive. The fixer, Tom Keylock, later admitted that he was indeed at Cotchford Farm that night. According to him, a senior officer at Scotland Yard informed him that Jones's death was ordered to be covered up because local police made numerous mistakes during the initial investigation. Keylock stated that the police wanted to pursue a manslaughter charge, but were told to drop it. He asserted that Frank Thorogood, the only person in the pool with Jones, could have been charged, but higher authorities decided against it. Keylock claimed that these orders came from the very top, and as a result, the investigation was never pursued further. Tom Keylock revealed that Frank Thorogood reportedly confessed to killing Brian Jones on his deathbed in November 1993, saying, "It was me that did Brian. I just finally snapped." However, conflicting reports suggest that Keylock denied the confession story at other times. Keylock was also accused of burning important papers at Cotchford Farm and ended up with many of Jones's possessions, including his Rolls-Royce. Today, all the main players in the case are deceased, and nobody who was there Blair can answer any more questions. Tom Keylock died on July 2, 2009, exactly 40 years after Brian Jones's death. This fact casts a further shadow of mystery over the events of that night. Due to the deaths of these key individuals, some lingering questions surrounding Brian Jones's death remain unanswered. For instance, how did Frank Thorogood injure his wrist so badly on July 2nd that he needed medical attention? Why was Tom Keylock never formally questioned by the police about the events leading up to and following Jones's death? Jones's need to escape from Sergeant Norman Pilcher's relentless harassment in London significantly influenced his decision to relocate to East Sussex. Pilcher, notorious for targeting pop stars and 1960s counterculture leaders, was a significant presence in Jones's life. Ironically, Pilcher himself faced legal consequences. In 1972, he was convicted on charges of conspiracy to pervert the course of justice and was sentenced to 4 years in prison. Despite maintaining his innocence until his death at age 84, Pilcher claimed that higher-ups in his squad were the corrupt ones, as reported by Vice. Interestingly, Pilcher's views on drug laws evolved over time. He later advocated for the legalization and regulation of all drugs, a stark contrast to his stance during the 1960s. Reflecting on his actions from that era, Pilcher stated, "We didn't care about pop musicians smoking cannabis. We wanted to go after the dealers selling the stuff. But people from the Home Office came down and said, these famous stars taking drugs are setting a bad example for the kids, and we want you to go after them. So, orders are orders, and that's what we did." This mix of confessions and denials makes Brian Jones's death even more mysterious. The unanswered questions have created a lasting mystery that continues to fascinate and puzzle fans to this day. If you enjoyed watching this video, be sure to check our other similar and amazing videos on the screen. Thank you for watching, and we will see you next time.